The night Mia was kidnapped by the Vampire King, she was wiping ketchup off a cracked diner table and thinking about tips that never came. The neon sign outside flickered in sickly pink and blue, buzzing like an angry insect above the empty street. She smelled burnt coffee, old grease, and the lemon cleaner she had watered down to make it last through the week. When the bell over the door chimed, she didn't look up right away. She thought it was another drunk customer, not the men who would drag her out of the life she barely held together. Mia finally glanced up and saw 3 strangers in long, dark coats, soaked from the drizzle outside. They didn't match the chipped sugar dispensers, the squeaky red stools, or the sleepy radio song playing in the background. Their eyes moved in perfect sync, sweeping the diner like they were counting exits, not menu items. For some reason, her stomach turned cold. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, smoothed her cheap apron, and forced a smile. "Coffee?" she asked, but her voice came out smaller than she wanted, as if it already knew these men weren't here to eat. The tallest one didn't answer. His gaze slid past her, then came back, pausing on the small name tag pinned crooked over her heart. Mia. His nostrils flared, as if he smelled something on her that she couldn't. "You close alone tonight?" he asked. His voice was too calm, too steady for a man making small talk. Mia swallowed. "Yeah, why?" He glanced at the empty street through the window, then at the clock above the kitchen door. "Because," he said softly, "the king doesn't like to wait. But before we continue, I want to invite you to something very special. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. Now, let's continue." Mia laughed nervously, thinking it was some weird joke. Kings belonged in fairy tales, not in her dead-end life with overdue rent and a sick little brother at home. "Right," she muttered, reaching for the coffee pot. That was when the shortest of the 3 moved behind her in one smooth, silent step. She didn't hear a chair scrape or a shoe squeak. She just felt a sudden presence at her back, a hand clamping gently but firmly around her wrist. Her breath caught. Something in the air changed, like the moment before lightning touches the ground. "Don't scream," the man whispered in her ear. "We don't want to hurt you. We just need to take you in." She didn't remember screaming. She remembered the hot sting of fear behind her eyes, the metallic taste of adrenaline on her tongue, and the way the neon lights blurred as they hustled her out the back door. The night smelled like wet asphalt and old trash. A black car waited in the alley, engine humming low. Her feet slid on the damp pavement as one of them opened the door. "You have the wrong person," Mia choked out. "I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress." The tall one looked annoyed, like someone whose delivery order had gone wrong. "You were at the address," he replied. "You answered to the name. You're coming with us." Inside the car, the windows were tinted so dark she could barely see the city lights. The leather seat felt cold through her thin uniform. Every bump in the road made her stomach twist. She pressed her palms together to keep them from shaking and tried to breathe slow. "Who is this king?" she managed to ask. "And why does he need me?" The man beside her, the quiet one with silver flecks in his hair, studied her face. His eyes glowed faintly red in the dim cabin light. "Because you belong to someone who owes him," he said, "and the king always collects what he's due." They drove for what felt like hours, watching the city fade into empty highways and forests that pressed close to the road. Mia's eyelids burned, but she didn't dare blink for long. Every sound was louder in the dark. The steady purr of the engine, the tires hissing on wet asphalt, the soft murmur of the men talking in a language she didn't understand. It was smooth and sharp at the same time, like velvet wrapped around a blade. At some point, her fear shifted into a strange numbness. "My brother," she muttered suddenly. "I have to call my brother." The tall one shot her a glance. "You won't be gone long," he said, "if everything goes well." When the car finally slowed, Mia felt it before she saw anything. The road changed under the tires, from rough to smooth stone. The air grew cooler, cleaner, carrying the faint smell of pine and something sweet, like distant flowers. The doors opened, and she stepped out onto a courtyard lit by silver lamps and the pale light of a full moon. In front of her rose a palace that didn't belong to her world. Tall towers pierced the sky, windows glowed with a soft blue light, and stone walls held carvings of creatures with wings and fangs and eyes that followed her wherever she moved. Her knees almost gave out. Where are we?" she whispered. The silver-haired man stood beside her, his coat now catching the moonlight and revealing intricate embroidery like coiled vines. "You stand in front of the house of Voren," he said, "the seat of our king." His voice held a quiet pride. "Welcome to his court." The word court made Mia think of judges and sentences, of guilt and punishment. She clutched her apron with stiff fingers. "I really think you made a mistake," she insisted. "I don't know anyone important. I don't know anyone rich. I don't know anyone who could owe a king." They led her through high doors into a grand hall where the air was warmer and smelled faintly of incense and old books. The floor was polished stone that echoed every step. Torches along the walls burned with a soft blue flame that didn't crackle or smoke. They just glowed, like trapped stars. Mia's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, was a long chair that wasn't quite a throne and not quite a couch, made of dark wood and lined with blood-red cushions. A man sat there, lounging as if the world existed to entertain him. He looked nothing like the monsters from the stories Mia had heard as a child. He looked young, maybe in his late 20s, with dark hair falling over his forehead and a jaw that could have been carved by someone with too much time and a good knife. His skin was pale but not sickly, and his eyes, when he lifted them, were the color of deep wine held against the light. He wore no crown, only a simple ring that glimmered on his right hand. Yet there was something heavy about him, something in the way the air seemed to bend around his presence that made Mia's lungs forget how to work. The tall man bowed. "My king," he said, his voice lower than before. "We brought her. The human from the address you gave us. Mia Reed." The name hung in the air. The king's gaze traveled over her slowly, taking in her cheap uniform, her trembling hands, the smudge of ketchup she had missed on her sleeve. For a second, she thought she saw confusion flash across his face. Then his expression smoothed. "Come closer," he said. The words weren't loud, but they rolled through the hall like a command carried on a storm wind. Mia's legs moved before her mind agreed. Each step toward him felt like walking into deeper water. When she reached the bottom of the platform, she stopped, forcing herself to look up. Their eyes met, and something strange happened. For a heartbeat, his gaze softened, almost startled, as if he had seen a ghost. The room seemed to tilt. A vein in his temple pulsed. "Your eyes," he murmured. "They're the wrong color." The tall man shifted uncomfortably. "Sire?" he asked. The king leaned forward, examining her like a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture he had in his mind. "You were supposed to bring me a girl with green eyes," the vampire king said slowly. The silence that followed was heavy. Mia felt it settle on her shoulders like an invisible weight. She swallowed, shaking. "I told them," she whispered hoarsely. "I told them you had the wrong person." For a moment, she expected rage, punishment, a wave of anger for the wasted effort. Instead, the king did something she didn't expect. He laughed softly, a low, almost disbelieving sound that carried no real humor. "So," he said, leaning back again, studying her as if she had become more interesting instead of less. "A human with the wrong eyes, the wrong name, and the wrong life, who still ended up here." His fingers tapped the arm of his chair, a slow, measured rhythm. "Take the others out," he ordered quietly. The three men bowed and retreated, their footsteps fading until the hall was almost silent. Mia could hear the faint crackle of the blue flames now, and the whisper of her own breathing. They were alone. The king's voice dropped, softer, almost human. "You were never meant to be taken," he said. "The woman I ordered captured betrayed me. She stole something that belongs to my bloodline." He tilted his head slightly. "So tell me, Mia Reed, why does your scent carry the same mark as hers?" Mia stood frozen in the vast hall, the silence pressing against her ribs as if the air itself carried weight. The vampire king's question lingered like smoke in her mind, twisting around her fear. She didn't understand what he meant about her scent, or how she could be connected to someone powerful enough to betray a king. Her heart hammered, and she felt the dampness of sweat under her collar. "I don't know anything about your world," she whispered, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. "I don't know why I'm here. I just want to go home." For a moment, the king's expression flickered with something unreadable, neither cold nor kind, but curious, as if she was a puzzle he had not expected to receive. He rose from his seat with slow, deliberate movements, and his presence shifted the air. Up close, he looked even more unreal, his features too precise, like someone carved from moonlit stone. His boots echoed softly on the polished floor as he descended the steps, stopping just a meter from her. She could smell something on him, a faint mix of iron and lavender that made her skin prickle. "Your scent carries an imprint," he said quietly. "A thread tied to my bloodline, faint but unmistakable." Mia shook her head, breath hitching. "Maybe I walked past someone on the street," she offered with a weak voice. "Maybe your magic thing is confused." But the king only watched her with an intensity that made the hairs on her arms stand. He lifted a hand as if testing the air between them. Mia flinched before he touched her, but he didn't seem offended. His fingers hovered an inch from her cheek, and she felt a strange warmth radiate from them, soft but unsettling, like heat rising from a fire she couldn't see. "Not confused," he murmured. "Faint, old, dormant, but real." His gaze darkened for a moment. "The traitor's scent was stronger, but the root feels the same." Mia stepped back, her legs unsteady, her voice cracking. "I'm nobody. I work double shifts at a diner. I don't betray kings. I don't even have time to betray myself." For the first time, a ghost of amusement crossed his face, gone almost instantly. "You speak boldly for someone trembling," he said. "Most humans don't look me in the eyes." Mia didn't mean to be bold. She was terrified. But fear had a strange way of pushing her forward instead of back. She thought of her brother Ethan, waiting at home without dinner because she hadn't picked up groceries. She thought of rent due in 6 days. She thought of the manager who threatened to replace her every week. Compared to all that, maybe looking at a vampire king wasn't the worst thing she had done. "Can I please go?" she asked, softer now. "I swear I won't talk. I swear I won't come back." The king studied her face with that same unreadable expression, then turned away and walked toward the tall windows at the far end of the hall. Moonlight cut across his silhouette, outlining the sharp angles of his shoulders and jaw. "You cannot leave," he said finally, his tone neither cruel nor gentle, simply absolute. "Not until I understand why the scent of a traitor clings to someone as insignificant as you claim to be." Mia's throat closed. Insignificant. He said it the way someone might describe a pebble on a path, but the word didn't hurt. What hurt was the thought of Ethan waking alone. "But you'll let me go after?" she pressed, her voice small. The king's fingers tightened at his sides, a subtle movement she almost missed. "If there is no danger in you," he replied, "I have no reason to keep you." It wasn't a promise, but it was the closest she would get. He summoned someone with a gesture, and the silver-haired man returned, his expression calm and controlled. "Take her to the east wing," the king ordered. "Give her something warm to wear. I will question her again at dawn." The man bowed slightly, then motioned for Mia to follow. She hesitated for a moment, staring at the king's back. There was something heavy in the air around him, something lonely, though she didn't understand why she felt it. But she tore her eyes away and forced her legs to move. The silver-haired man guided her out of the hall and through corridors lit with blue flames and lined with ancient tapestries depicting winged figures and battles she didn't recognize. The castle smelled of stone, old paper, and something floral she couldn't name. Every sound echoed: her footsteps, her breath, the quiet hum of distant halls. She felt small and out of place, like a stain on glass too clean to hold her presence. "What's your name?" Mia asked the man beside her, more to break the silence than anything. He glanced at her. "Lauren," he answered simply. His voice was steady, almost soothing. "I am the king's second." Mia swallowed. "Does he usually kidnap people?" Lauren didn't smile, but his eyes softened slightly. Not without reason. She didn't know if that was supposed to make her feel safer or more afraid. They reached a tall door, carved with symbols she didn't understand. Lauren pushed it open, revealing a simple but elegant room with a high ceiling, stone walls, and a narrow fireplace already lit. The warmth brushed her skin, and she almost cried from the relief of it. On a table sat folded clothes, dark and soft-looking. Lauren gestured to them. "Change into these. You'll be more comfortable." Mia hesitated, her fingers brushing the fabric. It felt impossibly smooth, warmer than the room, as if it held its own heat. "Why is this happening?" she asked quietly. Lauren paused before answering. "There are marks humans do not see," he said. "Marks of bloodlines, oaths, and betrayals. The king smelled a mark on you that should not exist on a human." Mia hugged herself, the fear creeping back in. "And if he finds out, I don't have anything to do with any of it?" Lauren met her eyes for a long moment. "Then you will be free." The words were simple, but his tone carried something else, something unspoken that tightened the air. Mia wasn't sure she believed him, but the warmth of the room and the exhaustion pressing on her bones left her too weak to argue. When Lauren left, closing the door softly behind him, Mia stood alone in the quiet room. She felt the crackling heat of the fire, smelled the faint scent of the wood, heard the soft whistle of wind against the window. For a moment, she let herself breathe. She changed into the clothes left for her, surprised by how perfectly they fit, as if someone had measured her without asking. The fabric hugged her arms and settled around her waist, light but protective. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tangled in her hair, mind spinning with fear, confusion, and something else she couldn't name. As she lay back on the soft mattress, staring up at the carved ceiling, a question echoed in her mind. Why would a vampire king, ruler of a realm she hadn't known existed, look at her like she was a missing piece of a past he couldn't let go? And why, despite everything, did she feel that her life, small and simple as it was, had never truly belonged to the world she came from? Mia didn't sleep much that night. The room was warm, the blankets soft, and the fire crackled with a gentle rhythm. But her mind ran circles around itself. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the vampire king's face, the way his attention sharpened the moment he realized she wasn't the woman he ordered captured. There had been something else there too, something she couldn't name. Curiosity, maybe. Recognition, maybe. But none of it made sense for a girl who spent her nights serving pie to truck drivers. She turned on her side, listening to the wind humming against the stone window, feeling a pressure behind her ribs that made it impossible to rest. When dawn finally brushed the room with pale blue light, Mia sat up, her muscles stiff from tension. She ran a hand through her tangled hair and breathed in the faint scent of smoke from the dying fire. A soft knock sounded on the door. For a moment, she panicked, her body tensing as if expecting danger. But when Lauren stepped in, she felt a strange wave of relief, even though she barely knew him. "The king is ready to speak with you," he said. His voice was calm, but not cold. He handed her a dark cloak lined with velvet. "Wear this. It is cold in the outer halls." She slipped it on, surprised by how it wrapped around her like a protective shield. They walked through long corridors where the floor held the night's chill. Torches flickered as she passed, their blue flames bending slightly, as if acknowledging her presence. Mia kept her hands clasped beneath the cloak, trying to hide the faint trembling. "Lauren," she asked quietly, "what happens if the king doesn't find what he's looking for?" He didn't answer at once. His steps were steady, his expression unreadable. "The king is not cruel," he said finally, "but he is bound by laws that existed before any of us." Mia didn't know if that was meant to comfort her, but it didn't. If anything, it made the palace feel heavier, as if every stone carried a secret she wasn't allowed to understand. They reached the grand hall, its tall windows spilling weak morning light across the gleaming floor. The king stood near one of them, his silhouette carved in silver by the rising sun. Mia noticed he wasn't wearing the heavy coat from last night. Instead, he wore a fitted black shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing pale skin marked by faint, elegant lines, almost like silver veins. They pulsed softly, like something alive beneath the surface. When he turned to face her, his eyes were less harsh than before, but no less piercing. "You look stronger today," he said. The comment surprised her. "I didn't sleep," she replied, unsure if he was teasing her. "Strength isn't always about rest," he murmured. He walked toward her with slow, controlled steps, his presence filling the hall even without a crown or an army. "You said you are nobody," the king began, his gaze locked on hers. "But there is no such thing as nobody in my realm. Every scent, every thread of energy, every mark has a lineage." Mia swallowed. "Maybe someone in my family did something," she offered. "Maybe someone far back." He shook his head. "The imprint is too faint. It is either dormant or suppressed, but it exists." He studied her for a moment, then added quietly, "Tell me about your parents." Mia felt her heart twist. "My mom died when I was little," she said. "My dad left before that. I only have my brother now." The king's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly, but she felt the ripple of it. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the coolness of his aura brushing her skin like a cold breeze. "What do you know of your mother's past?" he asked. Mia opened her mouth, then closed it, feeling suddenly small. "Nothing," she admitted. She never talked about it. She worked 2 jobs. She was tired all the time. She just lived. The king's gaze softened, but only slightly. Humans often forget the weight their ancestors leave behind. Sometimes the past hides in their blood until something forces it awake. Mia bit the inside of her cheek to keep from trembling. "I don't want anything to waken me," she whispered. "I just want my life back." For a moment, something flickered across his features, something like regret. He exhaled slowly, then gestured for her to follow him toward a long table carved from dark wood. On it sat a small bowl filled with shimmering liquid that glowed faintly, as if reacting to the air. Mia stepped back instinctively. "What is that?" she asked, her voice tight. "A memory basin," he said. "It reveals echoes of the bloodline. It cannot be forced. It only responds when someone touches it willingly." Mia stared at the liquid, feeling her pulse pound in her neck. She didn't want answers like this. She wanted answers from real life, from papers, photos, something normal. But the king waited patiently, not pressuring her, just watching. "If I don't touch it?" she asked. "Then I must find another way," he said. "But it will take longer, and until then, you must stay here." Mia's breath came out uneven. Staying here meant Ethan waiting, worried, alone. She imagined him calling her phone over and over, getting no answer. She imagined his scared face. Her throat tightened. "If I touch it," she whispered, "will you let me call my brother afterward?" The king's eyes remained on hers, steady. "Yes," he said, and something in his tone told her he meant it. Her hand shook as she reached toward the bowl. The liquid shimmered brighter, responding to her presence before she even touched it. She hesitated, her fingertips hovering above the surface. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Fear is a sign that you know the choice matters," he replied quietly. She lowered her hand. The moment her skin brushed the liquid, a warmth surged through her arm, not painful, but powerful, like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. Her breath caught as the room blurred around her edges. She felt something pull at her, not physically, but deep inside her chest, tugging at a thread she didn't know existed. A whisper filled her ears, soft and distant, like a voice carried through water, a woman's voice. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone felt familiar in a way that hurt. A single image flashed behind her eyes, a woman with dark hair holding a baby wrapped in a white blanket. The woman turned her head, and Mia's breath broke. The liquid cooled instantly, and the vision snapped away like a rope pulled taut and cut. Mia staggered back with a gasp, her chest tight, tears stinging her eyes. The king stepped forward, catching her by the arm before she fell. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. Mia shook her head, trying to breathe. "My mother," she whispered. She said something. I don't know what it was, but she looked scared. She looked like she was hiding me from something." The king's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with realization. "Then it's true," he murmured. "Your mother crossed into our realm once, long ago." Mia's pulse thudded painfully. "Why?" she demanded. "What was she running from?" The king met her gaze, and the answer he gave struck her like cold wind. "Not what," he said. "Who?" He straightened, the lines on his arms glowing faintly. The traitor you were mistaken for wasn't just connected to my bloodline. His voice dropped, weighted with truth. She was connected to your mother. Mia felt the ground shift beneath her feet, though the stone floor never moved. The king's words echoed in her chest, like a knock on a locked door she didn't know existed. Her mother, who had worked double shifts, who carried exhaustion like a second skin, who never spoke of the past, had crossed into a vampire realm? It didn't make sense. Mia's throat tightened as she tried to breathe through the rising panic. "No," she whispered. "My mother never left our town. She never even had a passport." The king held her gaze with an intensity that left no room for lies. "Realms do not need passports," he said quietly. She shook her head hard, backing away from the table. The memory basin still shimmered, reflecting faint ripples of the image she had seen. "You're mistaken," she insisted, but her voice betrayed her. She knew the way her mother's arms trembled in that vision. She knew the whisper held urgency, almost fear. It was real in a way no dream had ever been. Lauren stepped forward from the shadows where he had watched silently, his expression softer than before. "The memory was yours," he murmured. "Not ours. Only blood can call to blood." Mia pressed her hand over her mouth, fighting the burn behind her eyes. "If she crossed into your realm, why? Humans don't just wander into places like this." The king walked slowly around the table, his boots silent on the polished floor. "Your mother was running from someone powerful," he said. "Someone who threatened your life before you were even born." Mia's heart slammed painfully once, as if rejecting the words. "Threatened me? Why would anyone care about me? I didn't even exist yet." The king's jaw tightened, and he looked at her not with pity, but with a somber understanding. "Some bloodlines carry potential," he replied. "Dormant gifts, marks of ancient ancestry. Yours remained hidden so long that even I thought the traitor's scent on you was a coincidence." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "But nothing about your presence is coincidence." She felt her knees weaken. The cloak suddenly felt too warm, too heavy, clinging to her skin like fear. "What kind of gifts?" she whispered. "I can't do anything. I'm not special. I can barely pay rent." Lauren exchanged a glance with the king before stepping closer. "It is not about what you can do," he said gently. "It is about what you are." The king continued. "The traitor, her name is Lyra, was seeking a child with the same dormant mark. A child of mixed lineage, half human, half something far older." Mia forced a weak laugh. "That's impossible. My mom was human, full human." The king considered her for a moment, then spoke words that chilled her more than the coldest wind outside the palace walls. "Your mother was not entirely human when she crossed back." Mia staggered, gripping the edge of the table to stay upright. Her pulse roared in her ears like rushing water. "You're saying my mom wasn't human?" Her voice cracked. "I'm saying," the king replied carefully, "that the woman who returned to raise you carried traces of power no human should possess. Yet she hid it flawlessly, either out of love or fear." Mia's breath trembled as she tried to process it. Her mother, the woman who cried quietly when bills were too high, who smelled of rosemary soap and warm laundry, hiding supernatural power? It felt impossible, but the memory in the basin had been unmistakable. The fear in her mother's eyes, the urgency of the whispered message, the way the light in the vision bent unnaturally around her. Mia stepped away from both men, needing space to breathe. She pressed a hand to her forehead, her skin clammy. "Okay," she whispered, forcing her thoughts into a thin thread of logic. "Let's say what you're saying is true. What does this have to do with me? I don't have powers. I can't sense anything. I'm not fast, strong, nothing." The king nodded slowly. "Because the mark inside you is dormant, hidden. Your mother suppressed it. That is the only reason Lyra didn't find you before I did." His gaze sharpened, lowering slightly. "But now that you are here, it may awaken." Mia's stomach twisted, nausea rising. "I don't want anything awakened," she snapped, her voice cracking. "I want my life back. I want to go home. I want my brother to know I'm alive." Something flickered across the king's expression. Concern, maybe, but it was gone before she could name it. "You will call him," he said quietly, "but only after I'm certain you are protected. If Lyra learns what you are, She will come for you." Mia felt cold from the inside out. "Why me?" she whispered again. "Why does any of this matter?" The king stepped closer, his voice a low rumble. "Because Lyra didn't betray me for power or revenge. She betrayed me for a bloodline she believed could threaten ours. If what I suspect is true, she was searching for you before you were even born." The room seemed to tilt. Mia's vision blurred at the edges. "But she doesn't even know me," she whispered. "She doesn't need to," the king replied. "She knows your blood." Mia's chest tightened as she absorbed the truth she had spent her entire life unaware of. A truth that had almost gotten her killed before birth, and might do so again. She looked at the king, her voice barely audible. "So what happens now?" The king held her gaze, his expression firm but not unkind. "Now," he said, "you learn what your mother died protecting." The king's words clung to Mia's thoughts long after he fell silent, echoing through her like footsteps in an empty corridor. Learn what her mother died protecting. The idea weighed heavily on her chest, almost too big, too unreal to fit into her life of double shifts and overdue bills. She felt Lauren's eyes on her, steady and watchful, as if waiting for her to collapse. But she didn't. She straightened slowly, though her legs trembled beneath the cloak. "I want to know," she said quietly, "but I need to call my brother first. He must be terrified." The king nodded, surprising her with how quickly he agreed. "You will," he said, "but first, you need to understand the risk." He gestured for her to follow him through a narrow passage that opened into a chamber dimly lit by floating blue orbs. The air here was different, colder but lighter, as if something unseen kept it moving. Mia stepped carefully, feeling the stone floor hum faintly under her feet. The king moved with the effortless grace of someone who belonged to every shadow in the room. "This place holds the oldest archives of our realm," he explained. "Records of bloodlines, rulers, wars, and betrayals. And among them, the truth about your mother." Mia's pulse quickened. Part of her wanted to run. Another part leaned forward, desperate for answers she didn't even know she needed. Before they could go deeper, the king paused and turned to her. His eyes glowed faintly, catching the light of the orbs above. "Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills." His voice returned to its usual calm afterward, as if the interruption had never happened. Mia barely had time to process it before they reached a tall wall covered in etched symbols that shimmered as the king raised a hand toward them. The stone parted soundlessly, revealing a hidden inner chamber. Inside, the air shifted again, warmer now, tinged with a scent Mia couldn't identify. Something earthy, ancient, and strangely familiar. A long table stood in the center, covered in scrolls and glass cylinders. Along the walls, carvings told stories she couldn't decipher. Winged figures offering fire, humans kneeling beneath eclipsed moons, and shadowed beings bound in chains. The king walked to one of the cylinders and gently lifted its lid. Inside lay a strip of fabric, old and frayed. Mia's breath caught. It looked like part of a blanket, a white blanket, exactly like the one in her vision. Her fingers curled into the cloak. "That's mine," she whispered without understanding how she knew. The king nodded slowly. "Your mother left it behind when she crossed into our realm," he said. "It belonged to you." Mia reached out, but hesitated an inch before touching it. She felt a hum in the air around the fabric, like distant electricity. "Why did she come here?" she asked. The king studied her face carefully. Because she was hunted, and because she carried a child whose blood held the potential to awaken ancient power. Mia shook her head, overwhelmed. "What power? I've never done anything special. I get tired too fast. I burn myself on coffee pots. The king raised a hand gently. "Power doesn't always show in childhood, especially if someone you trusted tried to bury it." The words hit her like cold rain. "My mother," she whispered. "She hid it from me?" Lauren stepped forward, his tone soft. "She hid it to save you." Mia turned toward him, her voice cracking. "Save me from what?" The king's expression darkened. "From Lyra," he answered. "She was once a member of my inner court, brilliant, loyal, or so I believed. But she discovered something forbidden. She learned that long before our kingdoms divided, some humans carried a diluted form of our essence, a seed of power passed through centuries. Mia felt the hair on her arms rise. "And I'm one of them?" The king nodded. "Your mother descended from a line we believed lost. Lyra wanted that bloodline for herself, to raise a child of mixed power and reshape the balance of the realms." Mia's stomach twisted. "So she went after me before I was even born?" "Yes," he said. "And when your mother realized the danger, she crossed into our world seeking protection. She came to me." Mia stared at him, stunned. "She came to you?" The king's voice lowered. "I was not a king then, but I offered her refuge. And when she left to return to the human world, she carried a promise of secrecy." Mia felt her breath catch, a knot forming in her throat. "Did you know I existed?" she whispered. "Did you know she was pregnant?" The king hesitated for the first time since she met him. "No," he said quietly. "If I had known, I would have protected you both." Something inside Mia softened and twisted painfully at the same time. She didn't want to trust him. She didn't want to feel anything at all. But his words carried a weight she couldn't ignore. "So Lyra is still looking for me," she said. It wasn't a question. The king stepped closer, his tone grave. "She believes the child she failed to capture all those years ago is now grown, and more dangerous to her than ever." Mia felt her knees weaken, fear coiling in her stomach like a tight rope. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Then what do I do now?" The king didn't look away from her. "Now," he said, "you stay alive, and I keep the promise I failed to keep decades ago." Mia's breath felt thin as she stood in the archive chamber, the truth tightening around her like invisible vines. Her mother had crossed realms. Lyra had hunted her before she had even been born. And now, all these years later, Mia was standing in the very place her mother had once begged for protection. She wrapped the cloak tighter around herself, wishing it could quiet the storm in her chest. "I don't understand," she whispered. "If my mother trusted you, why didn't she stay here? Why go back to the human world where she wasn't safe?" The king rested a hand on the table beside the ancient blanket piece, his fingers tracing its worn edges with unexpected gentleness. "Because she believed the danger would fade," he said. "And because humans cling to their worlds, even when those worlds break them." His gaze lifted to Mia, steady but not unkind. "She thought she could hide you better there than among vampires who could sense what she carried." Lauren nodded slowly, his expression shadowed. "No realm is perfect, but a mother's instinct is powerful. She chose distance over proximity to danger." Mia looked down at the tiny frayed fabric, her chest tightening. Her mother had held her in this, protected her inside this, fled with her wrapped in it. The idea of her mother running, frantic, desperate, made Mia's throat burn. "She must have been so scared," she said quietly. The king's voice softened in a way she hadn't expected. "She was, but she never hesitated. She fought harder than anyone I had ever seen." The words felt like a hand she didn't know she needed placed gently on her shoulder. Mia blinked back the sting in her eyes and stepped away from the table to steady herself. "If she protected me all those years, why did Lyra never find me?" The king exchanged a glance with Lauren before answering. "Because your mother hid the mark. She must have performed a concealment binding, something ancient and extremely dangerous for a human to do." Mia frowned, confused. "Binding? Like a spell?" Lauren shook his head. "More like locking part of your own essence away. Painful, risky, and irreversible without the same blood." Mia swallowed, absorbing the weight of what her mother had done. "So she hurt herself, to protect me." "Yes," the king said softly. "She burned the mark until it faded from all but the most sensitive senses. Lyra lost her trail, but she never stopped searching." Mia felt a tremor run through her. The idea of a powerful vampire spending decades hunting a child who had never done anything just because of her blood made her feel suddenly exposed, like she was standing under a spotlight she hadn't asked for. "And now that I'm here," she murmured, "the mark isn't hidden anymore." The king nodded. "Your presence in this realm is waking it, slowly but surely." Mia pressed a hand to her chest, as if she could feel something beneath her skin stirring. Can I stop it? She asked urgently. Can I hide it again? The king hesitated for a moment before answering. If you hide it now, you will be defenseless if Lyra finds you. The room seemed to shrink around her. So my choices are be hunted or become something I'm not. The king stepped closer, but not enough to touch her. His voice stayed low, steady. Your mother's blood made you part of this world before you ever took your first breath. You're not becoming something. You're remembering something. Mia shook her head, overwhelmed. This is insane. Yesterday I was cleaning tables and trying to make rent. Now I'm some ancient-blooded target in a castle I don't belong in. Lauren stepped forward gently. You belong in the place where your life is safest, he said. For now, that is here. But Mia wasn't convinced. How long until Lyra comes? How long until she finds out I'm here? The king's jaw tightened. Lyra has eyes in every realm. She will sense the stir in the mark eventually. Mia's heart thudded painfully. So I'm already running out of time. Silence filled the room for a moment before the king spoke again, his voice carrying a weight that settled into her bones. Mia, listen to me. You are not alone in this. I failed your mother once. I will not fail you. The sincerity in his tone stunned her. It felt like hearing a promise from someone who had never needed to promise anything to anyone. She found herself looking directly into his eyes, searching for even a flicker of doubt, and finding none. She exhaled shakily. If I stay, what happens next? The king stepped around the table, his presence calm but immovable. We train you to sense the mark, to understand it, to control it. If Lyra wants to control your bloodline, she must first face the one who stands between you and her. Mia felt the air change between them, the weight of something unspoken growing. You? She whispered. He nodded once. Me. The room fell into a quiet so deep she could hear her own heartbeat. Something warm flickered in her chest. Fear, yes, but also a strange thread of trust she hadn't expected to feel. She didn't know if it came from the mark, from fate, or simply from the way the king's voice never wavered when he spoke to her. But it was there. Finally, she steadied herself. If I stay, can I still talk to my brother? Can he know I'm alive? The king's expression softened more clearly this time. Yes, he said. I gave my word. Relief flooded through her, weak and shaky, but real. For the first time since arriving at the palace, Mia felt her lungs expand fully. Then I'll stay, she murmured. At least until I can protect myself, until I can protect him. The king inclined his head, something almost like pride flickering in his eyes. Good, he said quietly. Because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew. Mia followed the king through a long stone corridor that sloped downward, the air cooling with each step. She didn't know where he was taking her, but something in his posture told her this place mattered. Torches flickered along the walls, their blue flames casting ripples of light over carvings older than anything she had ever imagined. Her heart thudded softly, a steady beat that reminded her she was still human, still scared, still trying to hold on to a world that felt farther away with every breath. Where are we going? She asked quietly. The king glanced back at her, his expression grave. To the heart of the mark, he said. To the place where everything began. They stepped into a circular chamber carved directly into the mountain. The air held a subtle hum, like vibration beneath stone. In the center stood a pedestal of black marble, smooth as glass. Mia felt the hair on her arms rise the moment she entered. The energy here wasn't threatening, but it wasn't gentle either. It pulsed, aware of her. The king motioned toward the pedestal. This is the origin stone, he said. It contains echoes of bloodlines older than kingdoms. Your mother brought you here once, briefly. That is how she learned what you were, how she knew she had to hide you. Mia's breath shuddered out of her. It was hard to imagine her mother standing here, afraid, pregnant, chased by a traitor with ancient power. Harder still to imagine her touching something like this, knowing it would change everything. What will it do to me? Mia asked, her voice barely audible. Lauren stepped into the chamber behind them, closing the heavy door. The stone doesn't change you, he said softly. It reveals you, only the truth you already carry. Mia swallowed hard. What if I don't want the truth? The king met her eyes. Then you can walk away, The stone will not force you, but walking away means staying unprepared and vulnerable. The truth pressed in on her like a weight. She thought of Ethan, small, anxious, always trying to be brave for her. She thought of the tiny apartment, the cracked walls, the life she had fought so hard to hold together. That life felt fragile now, thin as paper in a storm. But if Lyra found her, Ethan would be in danger too. That thought cut deeper than fear. She stepped forward until she stood an arm's length from the pedestal. The air around it buzzed faintly, like static brushing her skin. "What do I do?" she whispered. "Place your hand on the stone," the king said. "Let it recognize you." Her fingers shook as she raised them. She felt Lauren's gaze steady on her, a quiet anchor in the tension. She felt the king's presence behind her, strong and silent, and then her palm touched the marble. Heat surged through her arm, not burning, but bright, like sunlight flooding into a dark room. She gasped, but didn't pull away. The chamber dimmed at the edges of her vision, and for a moment she felt suspended between worlds. Images flickered behind her eyelids, her mother running through a forest of silver trees, shadows chasing her, a flash of blue light, the sound of a protective whisper, and then a symbol, a mark glowing on a newborn's chest. Her chest. Mia staggered back, breath ragged. The king caught her before she fell, his hand steady on her arms. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice low. "A mark," she whispered. "On me. On the day I was born." Lauren stepped closer. "Describe it." Mia closed her eyes, recalling the faint lines. A circle, with 3 curved shapes around it, like wings. The king and Lauren exchanged a sharp glance. Mia felt fear spike in her chest. "What?" she demanded. "What does that mean?" The king released her slowly, but his expression had changed. Not fear, not anger, something heavier. "That mark," he said, "belongs to the ancient line of balance, a lineage believed extinct, a lineage capable of healing or destroying the divide between realms." Mia's mouth went dry. "I don't want that," she said, taking a step back. "I don't want to destroy anything. I don't want to heal anything. I just want my life." The king's voice softened. "And you will have it. But understand this. Your existence is not a weapon. It is a responsibility. Lyra doesn't want you because of who you are. She wants you because of what you might become." Mia's stomach twisted. "And what is that?" The king held her gaze. "Someone who can end her power completely." The words settled over her like a quiet storm. She didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel chosen. She felt terrified, small, uncertain. But she also remembered the warmth of Ethan's hand in hers, the way he trusted her with everything. If she ran now, Lyra would chase her until she had nowhere left to hide. "If I stay," Mia whispered, "can you keep her from finding him?" The king didn't hesitate. "I swear it." The sincerity in his voice struck her deeper than any truth she had discovered today. She took a breath that felt like the first full breath she'd had since being taken. "Then, I'll stay. I'll learn. I'll do whatever it takes to protect him." Something softened in the king's eyes. Pride, relief, or something else she wasn't ready to name. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly. "Your mother knew it. Now you will too." Mia looked at the origin stone one last time. The faint warmth still lingered on her skin, not frightening now, but strangely comforting, as if a part of her she never knew had finally woken. She straightened her shoulders. For Ethan, for her mother, for herself. The king stepped beside her, the light catching the silver lines on his arms. "Your training begins at dusk," he said. Mia nodded. Her life had changed forever, but for the first time she didn't feel stolen. She felt chosen, and she wasn't afraid of the path ahead, not anymore. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.